rename.
What are you changing your name to?
Well, I had Hoover Mark on there, John. I figured I'd change it over to Mark Hoover.
No one can see that. No one can see that.
I feel better about myself now.
You're Hoover from Rock 107.
Yeah, I should have changed it to that.
Now everyone knows your first name.
Yeah, I never hid my first name.
They're gonna find you in Duryea and they're gonna knock down your door and say, "Where is that Mark Hoover guy at?"
They may find you first.
Then no one's looking for me. I'm not on the radio. I'm not a big shot on the radio.
Well, you're an upper Duryea, as we refer to it, in lower Duryea.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess. I mean, I am up the hill.
Yeah, you are.
You know,
I get all your rainwater.
Well, yeah, and you're getting taxed on it. How about that?
Yeah. Well, I don't pay it.
You're gonna go to jail.
I know there's a lien on the house. I guess I figured if I ever sell it, I'll just figure that out at the closing.
Sure. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So Hoover from Rock 107. How are you?
Good. Johnny, formerly of Rock 107, two-time Rock 107 employee.
Yeah, I mean, can I make it a comeback 3 times?
That's not up to me, but I wouldn't mind you having back on the floor.
Do you miss me?
I know Matt Rabovich misses you.
I mean, when I did this with Neil Trauma, he started crying at the very beginning because he had seen me for the first time in almost a year, and he couldn't. He said that he was sad about all the commission that he was or the talent fees he no longer got because I wasn't there, and it was sad. It was a sad day.
Hey, you were his Duncan contact, weren't you?
Duncan, I think we did some McDonald's. I think we Comcast.
Yeah,
big Comcast dollars right there.
Yeah, and you always took care of me with Keystone. I think I have one of them.
Well, yeah. So I was hoping you would be having a beer during this.
I got my Coors Light Verastro bucket.
Oh, shout out LT Verastro
and Keystone Lights.
Okay. I'm sure you're still. I mean, you're Hoover and you're Keystone Light guy. You're the hunting guy, the fishing guy. I mean,
it's not like I ever wear flannel.
Never. I actually brought a flying fish in honor of Time Shamrock, who is the owner of Rock 107, also ownership of Flying Fish Brewing Company. So shout out Time Shamrock and Flying Fish.
Oh, John, is that something you drink on a regular basis, or you one of those guys who mixes it up all the time?
I mix it up a lot. I'm a craft beer snob, I guess you could say.
Okay.
But this came in like a variety pack. Flying Fish has some kind of like a hazy bones that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked that up over the summertime last year. So this is leftover from that. So cheers to you. Good seeing you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll grab one myself. I got to get a coaster so that I don't get yelled at.
Oh yeah. You're sitting in that nice sunroom, the new sunroom.
Yeah. All right.
Hoover and
I got little records for coasters.
Of course you do. Yeah, Hoover and I used to be neighbors. We kind of still are, but I used to be able to see his house from my house at one point. And the Hoovers have built a complex over there.
Yeah, well, first we got the dogs and then we got the fence. During COVID, when both my wife and I were both working from work, I'm both working from home, we realized working from work.
Yeah.
We realized we have a modest house, and we realized how small it was because we were home 24/7, and we're like, hey, we should put a sunroom on and put a bar out there, and that's what we did. And I watch a lot of TV out here. I got my fridge out here. Last night was beautiful. I was out here till like midnight last night just watching TV, and today I got the Amish heater on and I got a flannel on out here.
You got the quite the man cave there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, that happened with COVID. They were home a lot. They started lifting up the rugs, as they say, and finding a lot of dirt, and they started cleaning, they started remodeling, they started adding on to their homes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, one of the I guess good outcomes of COVID, people kind of did some reflecting internally, and they took care of their home because they were home more. And
now, did you move during the pandemic?
I did. I
Okay.
moved 3 or 4 months into the pandemic.
That's when the interest rates were super low.
They were super low. I had sold the house that I'm sorry. I sold the house that I was renting to the former program director at Rock 107 because he had moved away. And so I had this house that I didn't want to be a landlord. So I sold that in December of 2019. So I had a little bit of money sitting around that I was able to, put down a down payment for the house that we're currently in. So it all worked out.
And is this your basement we're looking at, John?
We're in the basement. This is the bar I'm sitting. This is where I host the podcast, and yeah, the computer's on the bar. This is the backdrop. My Joe Rogan custom made lamp from Scott Nichols is there.
Yeah, I do have to give you credit, John. When you were years ago, you're a Joe Rogan fanatic.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about him. I knew he was a comedian. I didn't know much about his prior history to that. But I got hooked on his podcast. I mean, he just did one this week with Bill Maher, which was absolutely fantastic.
I saw you posted about that. So today is, I'll do a little setup here. Today's April 14th. This may not be released until May 1st. So anyone listening, just a frame of reference for you. But yeah, so I saw you post on Facebook today. You listened to the Bill Maher show, the episode with Bill Maher and Joe Rogan. And I have not gotten to that yet. And I wanted to, because I would have thought we could talk about that. But I mean, what about Joe Rogan do you like so much now? I mean,
well, like I said, I didn't know much about him, so he wasn't on my radar. And then, I started listening to more and more podcasts. Yours and everybody else's. There's so many.
Don't lie to me.
Yeah, there's so many of them right now. Hey, I listened to your whole what was it, the Weekender Chronicles?
Yeah, that's been fun. Yeah.
So I guess this is part 2 of the Shamrock Chronicles.
Yeah, we're gonna go back into the my past history in media.
Yeah, we'll have to get me hauling Prospector and.
Yeah, I saw Prospector's going to be on the Getting to Know the 570. That'll be out before this airs. But yeah, that's a good podcast too with Frankie Sepko and the people over at Conversion Works. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were listening to podcasts and
I caught Joe every once in a while, and then he got all that unnecessary controversy, and I go out of my way now to make sure whenever he has what was he, bi-weekly, right? They come out twice a week.
Sometimes 3. He's he's typically a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
I make sure not to miss it now.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of wore me out a bit during COVID. Just a lot of COVID talk, and I mean, what I like about him is he has people on that talk about they're for vaccines. They're they talk about all that stuff, but then he also has guests on who talk about why vaccines may or may not be bad. I don't want to get into it because, I'm not a scientist. You're not a scientist, none of that. But like, I like that he has like both sides. It's never like a one-sided thing. For a while, he was very, very anti-COVID, anti-vaccine kind of maybe sort of. But I was just getting burnt out from the COVID talk in general.
Yeah, I didn't listen to a lot of his COVID podcasts because I burnt out on it as well. I mean, even all of our podcasts, everybody in Northeast PA who was doing podcasts, they were all the same thing, asking artists, what did you do during the pandemic? Did you write new music? Are you happy to be back on the road? And I'm like, I've had enough of that too.
Yeah, it's tough because like, and as you know, I talk to a lot of musicians and like, I hate talking about it, but it's almost like if we don't talk about it, it's like we missed 2 years of our lives because, that was a big part of our lives, unfortunately. But I try not to talk about too much, but I feel like I have to at least touch on it for a minute. But
and I tell you what, a lot of musicians made some, they did a lot with their time. And then other musicians I talked to are like, yeah, we just sat around and did nothing for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was worried that like people, like musicians were going to have like a hard time just because they couldn't be out there playing. But a lot of them, like you said, they just kind of, buckled down and they wrote some good music and they really took advantage of the time.
Yeah, and technology advanced pretty well. I mean, look how far Zoom has come in the last 2 years.
I'm so mad that I did not invest in Zoom. I remember it being March 2020, and it was like it may have been like $15 a share at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what, this is going to be 2 weeks to, what is it? 2 weeks to
Flatten the curve.
flatten the curve. I'm like, we'll be back before we know it. This isn't going to be a thing. And I'm kicking myself in the butt now.
Right.
But what are you going to do?
You got to do a hostile takeover. You got to Elon Musk that.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, I know.
Can you imagine having that kind of money on hand, offering to buy it was two point some billion dollars cash?
Yeah. And then he wants to buy it outright now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then I heard he said that if they don't agree, he's just going to dump his shares and move on. I don't know.
I don't know either. But I think it's time for some kind of change at Twitter. And I'm not talking about their policies, but man, I get lost anymore in Twitter. There's just so much on there.
I was never a big Twitter guy.
Yeah.
It's too much. It was like you're saying, it's too much. It's too everyone's tweeting every 2 seconds, and it's just too much for me.
And I get constant tweets and even notifications of people I don't even follow.
Yeah,
like I go through my news feed and I'm like, why is this story here? And I'll click on it. I'm like, I'm not even following this person. Like, why am I seeing it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a Wild West to me.
Yeah, me too.
But
you're into that Snapchat and the TikTok. So
I don't Snapchat. I never even download the app, not once. I do have a TikTok. I do kind of get lost in the TikTok game at times. It's definitely a time suck. I mean, before bed, just sit there and just scroll for hours. It feels like,
That's how YouTube was when it first came out.
Really?
Yeah, when YouTube first came out, and it was like endless amounts of just, I was getting hooked on like old music videos when MTV was relevant, and just, and then you have the suggestions in the right-hand corner. Yeah. Oh, I'll watch that next. I'll watch that next. I'll watch that next.
That makes sense. So, but I wanted to talk to Hoover. Hoover, you and I never really, we joked about having beers in the garage and all that kind of fun stuff, but we never did it. We never sat down. We worked together for, I think, we joked that I was there twice. I went to Time Shamrock for a year. I left for 6 months. I like to joke around and say that I went on a 6-month
sabbatical
or like a rehab, whatever. And then I came back and I was there for.
You went to Haiti for 6 months.
Yeah. No, I was not addicted to drugs. I thought I wanted to get out of media, and I thought I had a good opportunity to do so. And I'll tell you what, I left for 6 months, and that was probably the biggest mistake I've made in my career, working career. So when I was able to come back to Time Shamrock full time, that was definitely a good move for me. And I remember Steve Borneman, who was the GM at the time, that kind of was there and kind of convinced me to come back, and I loved him a lot. I was so sad when he left, but long story short, I was there for a collective 7 years, and you and I worked together for those 7 years, and not different roles. I don't want to say that, but you have a new role now, and we'll get to that too. But you've been at Rock 107 Time Shamrock for quite some time.
It was 24 years last month.
24 years last month. Wow. And that's really cool to say, I think. I mean, when I was growing up and in college, and my parents were lifers at their jobs. They were there for X amount of years. My dad was PG Energy. I don't know how long it was before he passed away that he was there, but my mom just recently retired. She was at Cook's Pharmacy in Kingston since she was like 14. So I always imagine myself, you graduate college, you get the job, you're there for 50 years or whatever it might be. You get the Rolex and you kind of go off into the sunset. My life has not played out to be that way. So I was at the Weekender, Time Shamrock. I did a 6-month stint at eBay, came back to radio, and now I'm with Axelrad, which I'm very happy with. But I feel like that's been too many, spots. But you've been there for 24 years. I mean, how does that feel?
It's I was just saying the other day to somebody, like the first 10 years I was there, I almost remember every single day. And then after that, it just seems like the last 14 years have just flew by,
Yeah.
you know. I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my life or I don't know why, but it's just it's that weird feeling, like like even the first 10 years, I can remember all my interns. I could remember, all our part-timers who worked there and stuff like that. And then it's like all of a sudden we got to that point in life and the fast forward button hit and it just,
Yeah.
and here it is 2022.
Now, did you start on air at Rock 107?
I actually started back when ESPN was American Popular Standards, EJL. It was, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin and stuff. They were the Yankees flagship. And back before computers and stuff, back before computers, you used to have to come in and actually get the satellite on the board in the studio and make sure it went on air and play all the local commercials. And I started doing that over on EJL, and I was probably there a couple months, and I had the opportunity to go to Rock 107. I was already bugging the program director at the time. I want to be on air. I want to be on air. So he had like all my air checks and stuff like that from college. And we were live 24/7, 365. We're still playing CDs. We're still playing a couple vinyl cuts. And the overnight jock called off sick and they couldn't find anybody. And they're like, hey, do you want to go do it? And I already worked my other job at the Duryea Christmas Tree Farm all day long earlier. I was already sitting in the EJL studio since 7 o'clock with the Yankees game. And I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight, but this is my shot. I'm going to do this. And I went over there, did the midnight to 6 shift. And, and then the calls started coming in more often. Hey, do you want to fill in? Hey, can you do midnight to 6 on this weekend? Then it was like, hey, do you want your own, midnight to 6 shift, which ended up being Friday night into Saturday morning. So when all my friends were out partying, they'd all call me at 1 o'clock in the morning. Hey, play Ted Nugent or, play Neil Young or play some Ozzy for me. And then after a while, we ran the Best of D&W show on Saturday morning from 6 to 10. They're like, hey, can you stay an extra 4 hours and run the board for that as well? I was doing that for a couple of weeks. And back in the days when the radio station has, 3, 4, 5 remotes, live broadcasts on a Saturday, the whole promotions team would be there. And I got to meet those guys because they were coming in Saturday morning to get the keys for the band, get t-shirts and CDs out of the prize closet and, just BSing. And one day the marketing director, Tony Pollock, he's like, hey, you want to do promotions part-time? And I said, yeah, I could do that. So my Saturdays became even longer. I was going to work at midnight, doing the D&W thing until 10, and then finding myself hopping in the van at 10:30, and I'd be live at a car dealership, setting up for one of the full-time jocks, and sometimes going home and taking a power nap and be like, oh, we got a Verasser event at Grotto Pizza at Harvey's Lake, and we're going to be live tonight 8 to 10, and I power nap and then get back up, go to the station, grab the van, and then drive up to Harvey's Lake and then get home about midnight, and sometimes have to do it again on a Sunday.
You were a young man though.
I was a long time ago. And the technology for live broadcast back then, everything was microwave signals. You had to put the antenna in the air and point it to the receiver, and sometimes depending on where you were, you had to try to bounce it off some of the mountains in the valley and stuff like that to get like a ricochet shot to get to the transmitter site. And now you show up and it's a little box that works off a cell phone Wi-Fi card, and you basically turn it on and hit connect and call the radio station, be like, hey, do you hear me? Yeah, you're there, and you're ready to rock and roll.
You alluded to the fact before that time feels like the last 14 years have just kind of fast forward like in a blur. And I think I feel like we've almost been on autopilot with, the advancements of technology and all that kind of stuff. Whereas before, you're talking about, having to get there early, get the keys of the van, get set up, and make sure the signal's good, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like, and you're doing 5 or 6 a week, right? Or on a Saturday, you said. There was just like a lot going on, and like I feel like, and if you're like me, and I was in promotions and marketing in my early stages of the Weekender, you're always doing something different, but like you could like almost attach those moments and those events to like whether the time of year it was, or different groups of friends you were hanging out with, or whatever it might be. But there was a lot going on, like, and I feel like now, like I said, autopilot and things just kind of like happen almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I also think, it's part of life too. Like when you do something for the first time, that memory sticks.
Sure.
And
That's a
then
good point.
by the 35th or 45th time, it doesn't,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I say the same thing about my wife. Like, and this is no knock on her, but it kind of goes to what you just said. Like before I met her, it was, we were, I was with groups of friends. There was vacations, there were all these different things. And then like you meet the right girl, you kind of settle down, and not that you're on autopilot, but again, it's the same. Maybe it's the same things, or it's the same person at least, right? Um, and it's just kind of second nature. You're kind of just going with emotions. I'm not saying that like my marriage isn't fun and there's no excitement. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have a blast together. We still do a lot of different things, but it's not the same excitement as like you had when you were younger, and staying up till 3 in the morning and going to work, and having those laughs. And we're just older now.
Now, talk about staying up late. Like we could have probably did this weeks ago, but what I'm like, John, does it really have to be so late in the evening? Can't we do earlier?
That was funny. Yeah, like,
Yeah, because
really?
I'm usually just getting ready for bed around now.
Well, see, my kid goes to bed around 8:30, so that's why I do these so late. I make sure
Mm.
I get home, we do dinner, we just did snakes and ladders, so that's why I do them so late. I make sure that I spend some time with my wife and my kid, and so thanks for making the time.
Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, back to your radio days. I mean, you started off as like a call in, and the promotions department, and filling in on air shifts. Like, when did you get your first like big break, when you were like kind of full time?
Uh, it wasn't long. I started March of '98 part time, and I was full time by October of '98. Uh, I just happened to be that guy that was just always there. Uh, I had other jobs. I was working part time at Victoria Inns in Pittston. I was working somewhat close to full time at the Christmas Tree Farm in Duryea. I was still in the National Guard at the time, and I just I just love the feeling of walking in that place when I was younger. Like I said, we were live all the time. All the part time jocks all hung out in the jock lounge on the weekends, even if they weren't working. It was just a place to hang out. We would make fake commercials just to get better at our practice.
Sure.
We would air check each other. Some of the newer technology was already coming out. It used to be called Cool Edit Pro. Now it's called Adobe Audition. And we were just getting that. And, it was a place for us to sit there and learn how to digital edit. We were already out of college. It wasn't like you could walk back into college and be like, hey, do you have this? Or I'm going to spend a lot of money on a class to learn how to do this, when we had it, we could use it for free at the studio as long as nobody else was using it. And I just volunteered for everything. Parade's coming up, I'll do it. So somebody needs to fill in for Mike Evans next week, midnight to 6 every day, I'll do it. Somebody needs to go out Friday at Tinks from 10 to midnight, I'll do it. And when the job opened up, because this is when Prospector left on his like second stint there, and Prospector took a job down in Delaware, down in Rehoboth. And, I took his old job, which was the assistant promotions director. And I did that for a couple of years. And then once Tony Pollock here left, I think he went to sales. I think he did that in 02 or 03. I think it was 03. I applied for the promotions director job. I actually didn't get it. They hired some guy from Arizona. He came in and he only lasted a couple months. And then basically they walked in my office and said, "Hey, we're going to promote you." The bad part about that is they never filled the job that I had. So when the old promotions director didn't have to go to remotes and set them up, didn't have to worry about stuffing Easter eggs, for an Easter egg hunt, I was still doing all that stuff.
Well, that's been kind of your entire career.
Yes.
And we'll get to that in a minute, but I mean, you were a company guy, and I mean, I don't say that in a negative way at all. And I don't know if you listened to the one with Neil Trauma that we did a few weeks back, but I said if Hoover ever left Rock 107 or Times Shamrock, that would be some big shoes to fill, and mainly because not only because you're talented on air, but like you're the go-to, like you're the glue. I mean, you're always the guy that says, "Yeah, I'll do it." I mean, you just said it how many times a few seconds ago. Like you've always been that guy, and I always respected that about you. You've always been the person that people can go to, and you don't see a lot of that anymore.
No, and I don't see a lot of I do in a couple guys, but I don't see a lot in that of people, coming to intern with us or even part-timers. And I think somebody closed the door behind us about 10 years ago because just the way people work and come to work and treat work is different than the way I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you see that at any of your other places that you worked over the years.
Yeah, well, it's weird because I mean we're in a different world right now in 2022. I mean, I feel like the employees have a huge upper hand, and they I feel like employees they want a lot more from their employers, and it's not a terrible thing. I mean, they want more of a work-life balance, right? And that's not a bad thing by any
No,
means.
not at all.
But it's like, going back to what you said before, like if an opportunity arose, like you jumped at it, like you were just there. And I was the same way with the weekend. And when I interned there, like I was at every remote, even when I started full time, every remote, like every live event or whatever we were doing, like I was always there. But I was single, like it wasn't hard work either. It was a lot of fun, like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's different now. And even like the promotions game today is much different than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And a lot of that I think has to do with legal issues and, people not going out as much. And we could talk about how, the nightlife scene in this area and how it was 20 years ago was nuts. But yeah,
Think of all the clubs you had.
Yeah.
All the live music venues. They're all gone.
But it changes so quickly because you're only a few years older than me. And you like from when you were 21 and older, in 4 years, the landscape changed, when I was 21 and moving through. And
Well, even growing up in Duryea, I think there was, when I turned 21, there was over, there might've been 15 bars in Duryea.
That's crazy because this is a small town.
And now if you subtract the private clubs, there's two. You got Coloruso's, which just opened, and you have the Town Tavern.
Wow. That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, when I was growing up, there was the Mo Ritz and Uhas's and Alfie's Bar and the Duryea Sports Bar. I think I said that one already. I mean, there were just lots of places to go, like even right here. But even the concert venues, whether you're seeing, Riverside at the Staircase, Hiles was a hot spot every Monday night. Tinks was a go-to. The Woodlands, there was times the Woodlands would have a band in Streamside, a band in the 25th hour, and then there'd be a band down in the ballroom.
And the Woodlands was just recently sold.
Yes.
And have you talked to Mitch about that?
I haven't. I was down there a couple of weeks ago. Pat Verastro had his birthday party and he had AC/DC live wire and a Stones tribute act down there. And I thought I would have saw Mitch, and I texted him. I'm like, "Where are you at?" And I just got the blanket in Florida reply. So I
It is that
haven't had a
time of
chance.
year. It is that
Yeah,
time of year. So Pat Verash's birthday, and I did not get an invite.
I wasn't in charge of the guest list.
Man, I'm heartbroken. I am heartbroken.
I'm going to give you a little secret. I was working as much as I was enjoying some free Coors Originals.
I love that beer.
Yeah,
Coors Original is a great beer. You know, I thought Pat and I had something special during our time together.
you could have helped. You could have helped been a roadie that evening.
Damn, Pat. He won't listen to this, but if by chance he is, Pat him. My heart is broken.
Well, did you at least send him a card?
I didn't. This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
You worked with him all those years. You didn't know what his birthday was?
No, that's terrible of me, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, shame on you.
Damn. No, I'm the asshole.
Oh yeah. I forgot we're on a podcast. We can curse now.
We are. It's not live radio.
Yeah.
And speaking of live radio, like you mentioned, new technology, and a lot of times, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, as they say. Were you able to embrace the new technology? Was that something that you were like, wow, this is really cool. This can really benefit us, like when that was coming through?
I mean, I went to college in the 90s, so we were that computer age where everything was new constantly. So I would assume if somebody maybe 10 years older than me didn't have that advanced technology constantly changing through school and stuff, probably would have been a little bit more resistant to it. I know the program director at the time, he was resistant to it because in 2003, we were like one of the last radio stations in the country to still be playing CDs and LPs. When we had a new PD come in, like he couldn't believe that we were doing this. He's like, what's this, 1988? And it wasn't long before, we got a full-blown automation system there that played all our commercials and played all the music and stuff right off the computer.
It's funny you talk about this, and even when I was there, you guys would talk about this too. And I came to the stations for the first time in 2013, so you guys were obviously well on your way to the technology. But like, I hear the stories, and I can't really comprehend it. I mean, you're using CDs, and I mean, how does that even work? Can you explain that to me?
I mean, you had a couple CD players in the studio, and when one would start to end, you start the next one. I mean, you planned your bathroom breaks. For a long time, I was a host of the All Request Saturday night shift. And again, I had other jobs and I'd work all day long. And a lot of times I didn't have a chance to stop and get something to eat. So I'd always hope that somebody called in and be like, "Oh, somebody please request Frampton," or somebody request Indigada and Davida. And if it popped up and I had a phone call for it, I'd air it, start it. And then at the time down in Mulberry, they had Orlowski's Hoagie, and they had the Subs Now shop in there. So it was enough time for me to run down the back steps and run up a block and a half and get a hoagie and finally make it back up, to catch you into the song. Because even food delivery was tricky because like we were still locked down. I mean, all the doors were locked, the front doors, and you're on the 5th floor. And back up even more, John, one of the elevators there is still manually run.
Mhm.
But the guy who ran the elevator on the weekend was also a maintenance guy. So if he was out cleaning a floor or vacuuming the 4th floor, like, so say you ordered Alfredos and you didn't know when they were getting there, and you said, "Hey, there's a phone in the lobby, call this number when you get there." But was I going to have a long enough CD to run down the steps? Because there's a good chance the elevator guy is not going to answer when you're ringing the bell 5 times to come pick you up, take you down, get your pizza, pay for it, and come back up again. So
Can you imagine asking a kid to do that today?
Yeah.
They'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
No way, not a chance."
Yeah, but we had the old time elevator with the elevator operator and the gate and the door, and you know, things have changed, you know, I mean, the silly things in life.
But yeah, but like you talk about it, and like there's a part of that like sounds, yeah, it's a huge inconvenience, and you have to plan out your bathroom breaks, like you said. But like, there's still, like, to me at least, I mean, it sounds like there was a bit of fun to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was always something going on. Like I said, you walk in there any day of the week, there's always somebody in the studio. Uh, and the other thing about the early days of radio, I mean, you were like Google. Nobody had a phone. I mean, you're old enough to remember calling the local phone number to find out what the weather was going to be, or calling the movie hotline to find out what time, Batman Forever was playing.
Yeah.
But the phone would ring. You had listeners who you talked to. Sometimes, if you did one of those late shifts, there's times I was on the phone with complete strangers for an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes.
Hmm.
Uh, the people called. They wanted to know, uh, you know, when's this Def Leppard concert? Where could I buy tickets? Do you know how much they are? People would call up. People would call for like phone numbers. Hey, do you have a phone book there? Can you get me a phone number for this bingo hall? I want to call down there and stuff like that. And now people just get all that stuff off their phone.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many podcasts I've said, that I feel like the internet is a blessing and a curse.
I mean, all this useless knowledge I have about rock bands and what bass player played with Ozzy Osbourne from 1983 to 1985, and things that I thought would get me so far in life. Now you can find it on Wikipedia in 2 seconds.
Yeah, which is really cool to a degree, right? I mean, we have all the answers at our fingertips, but like, so much has changed, I think, in a negative way as well because of these things. And I don't know. And I mean, obviously radio has changed with the internet. Um, you know, did you see radio being what it is today when you first got there?
No, I mean, it was pretty much the same for so long. I mean, the last big change in radio was when AM started to die. I mean, when I was a kid, Warren 590 was the number one radio station in the market. Uh, I mean, that's where you got all your school delays too. Sitting by the radio, just they got to the P's, they got the Palmerton area. You're like, oh my, they're going to say Pittston area next. This is going to be great. I'm going to have a 2-hour delay. But I mean, then FM took over, and now it kind of it lost a little bit of listeners in about 10 years ago, but it flattened itself out. I mean, people try satellite radio, but I think the retention rate for satellites like 6%.
Mhm.
And people use Spotify. I actually use Buzz, which is CD quality streaming. There's my plug for something I don't have any interest in, except I pay for it.
What's it called?
Buzz.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's QOBUZ.
QOBUZ.
Yeah, but it's CD quality streaming.
Okay.
But I mean, I've noticed, even friends of mine do things different. I mean, there was a time where where you went to a barbecue, you're just hoping they had your station on, and if they had the country station on or the top 40 station or whatever. But now you see a lot of people with their smart speakers out by their pool and stuff. The other thing that aggravates me about that is I wish, if I'm at a party, put something on and leave it on.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like a song starts, like, oh, skip that. A song starts, oh, skip that. Oh, hey, do you have this? And they yell in their smart speaker, hey, play Chris Stapleton. And Chris Stapleton songs, oh, I don't like this song, skip this song. It's like, just put something on and leave it.
That's the world we live in, man. I talk
know.
about that a lot too. It's like, there's that FOMO. It's like this fear of missing out. Like, there's so much in our hands, and you listen to 30 seconds of a song, and it's like, that's enough. I want to go on to the next thing. Or
Yeah.
And I'd make the joke all the time that, I spend more time looking for something to watch on Netflix or Amazon or whatever it might be than I do spend actually watching something on those services,
Hmm.
because there's just too much.
Yeah.
And you're a big music guy too. It's like even like records and CDs, you would listen to them front to back, and they were recorded that way to listen to them start to finish. And now it's like, it's the singles, it's all this other kind of stuff. And again, like you're saying, we listen to a minute or whatever it is to a song, and we go on to the next because
I used to come home when I was in high school. I'd come home and I'd already have my CDs laid out for that afternoon before I even went to school, and I listened to them in that order, like start to finish.
yeah.
Uh, if there was an artist I bought an album by and I was a big fan of that artist, and if I didn't like that album, I would force myself to listen to it over and over again until I made a different decision. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. And then there's times you bring something home when it was new and you listen to it. It's like, oh my, this is amazing. This is really, really good. And there's a few albums that I remember that the second it started, I'm like, this album is epic. Now, I'm not a big Nirvana fan, but when Nevermind came out, I actually had to buy the CD single at Jordan Ardone's because the guy working the desk never even heard of them, and he found it in the single stack. So it just smells like Teen Spirit, the single. And I said, hey, if this comes in, call me. And he called me like 2 weeks later, and it came in. I went down and picked up Nevermind, and I went home, and there were the days I used to play video games where I listened to the album. I throw on my Sega Genesis and just start an album, start listening to it. I'm like, this is absolutely fantastic. And I remember going to school and telling some of my friends, like, oh, we never heard of Nirvana. And I listened to that album probably like 2 months straight, and I put it away because I was on to something else already. And then all of a sudden, yeah,
already
and
2
then
months.
I mean, I listened to it almost all the time, and then all of a sudden they just exploded. I'm like, hey, I know that band. That's the band I was talking about.
Yeah. What other musicians have you had that experience with, or albums, whatever?
When I got into the Beatles for the first time, I didn't think that they would consume me so much. Like, I'm like, these songs are super, super catchy. And again, before the internet. So then I start buying books about the Beatles and magazines about the Beatles and stuff like that. Just trying to read and get some information off it. And I was always the type of guy when I was buying albums, like if I got into a band, I'm like, I have to have their whole catalog, whether I like it or not. When I got into Black Sabbath and Ozzy, there's a lot of bad Black Sabbath albums, and I bought them because they were Black Sabbath. And a couple albums I listened to a couple times, I'm like, I never want to hear this album again. But do I still have it up in my CD collection? Absolutely. Would I sell it? No, because then it would break up the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And the Doors did that for me too. I got hooked on the Doors. Now I'm such a big Doors fan. Like, they put out reissues several times. I think I have 4 to 5 copies of every album. I have like the original Elektra release. Then I have the 25th anniversary. Then I have the 40th anniversary. Then I have the 50th anniversary. Then I have the deluxe editions with the remixes. And
you're the guy that those bands keeps those bands in business.
Yeah,
guys, we're going broke. We need to release.
I see an ad for something. I'm like, just take my money. Just take my money.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And what's it like? I mean, like you love music. You've been tied to it for so long. What's it like being able to like play that music on the radio for listeners and to connect with listeners that way? Like, I mean, how cool is that?
It's pretty cool. Again, you go back to the first 10 years, I remember so many times playing something for the first time, like, I don't know, like a certain Bad Company song, like you hear it during the week, and DC Dave played it, and Mad Dog got to play it, and Fontaine and oh, man, I've been here months and months and months. That Bad Company song never showed up on my air shift. And that one day you walk in and you grab your music log and you look and say, oh, I got that Bad Company song. I could finally play it. And then even back in the days when Rock 107 played new music, just the joy. Like I remember, Audio Slave for the first time. I remember playing, bands like Three Doors Down, fresh out of the box. And we thought it was cool because, name of the song was Kryptonite, and like, a pretty big Superman fan. I'm like, this should be cool.
And when did Rock 107 kind of stop playing new music?
When Audio Slave came out, the owner of the company, well, one of the owners of the company, it had that real wicked bass opening. Remember with the scratching of the bass and stuff? And the phone call came upstairs. Don't ever play that again. And it didn't. And then slowly over the next like 2 weeks, everybody started to notice that all the new music was starting to disappear. And then like another week after that, we had a big meeting in the auditorium, and it was like, we are going pure classic rock today. So anytime I hear Audio Slave, I always think that's the beginning of the end of that era of Rock 107.
And what year was that?
It had to be 02 or 03.
Okay. So you guys are going on a little over 20 years of classic rock. And I mean, like, it's the number one classic rock station in the market that is, Northeastern PA, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. And I mean, I remember growing up, my parents, playing that music. And I was never like, it was okay, but I was never like in love with it. But like now, as an adult, it's like I have a much greater appreciation for that music. So I'm glad that there's a station in this area that like focuses on that. And
you know what amazed me about a lot of that music? Like, when I first got my driver's license and you had all four windows down in your car and you're blasting Rush, and you're like, oh, the neighbors probably hate me. Now you go to Garrity's and you're shopping for lunch meat, and you hear Tom Sawyer, on the radio at Garrity's, and you're like, and you're looking around and be like, wow, 20 some years ago, I was doing this to scare the neighbors. Now all the neighbors are shopping to it now.
Yeah. That's so it's interesting how time evolves. And I mean, you also were around when Daniels and Webster was a huge name.
Oh,
correct?
Absolutely. I mean, they were some of the weirdest questions I've ever been asked about radio have been about those guys. Somebody asked me once, and I was working there a good 5 or 6 years, if I knew them. And I stared at them for a little while, and then I came back with an answer that I used quite a bit until they disbanded. I'd be like, not really. They have their own private studio, and they also have their own private elevator. And if they happen to be in the hallways, we're directed not to talk to them. And what even made that joke even funnier, that we found out from I don't know which one it was, Opie or Anthony, but he had a similar experience with Howard Stern. Do you remember that video that went viral a couple of years ago? How everybody had to go in their offices and close their door when Howard came in and out of the studio and walked to the Sirius XM studios.
I didn't know.
If you haven't seen it, it's probably on YouTube, might even be on TikTok. Just like, King Howard's coming through, and you could hear the announcement, please clear the hallways. Because he didn't want to talk to anybody. But I used to put on the illusion that's how Jay and John were. Like, we're not even allowed to discuss or mention anything to them. And they're like, oh yeah, I get that, I understand that. But Jay and John were just so down to earth. John, who recently retired from radio, I think over a year already, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the end of 2020 he retired.
Well, it's so interesting because my dad used to listen to Rock 107 in the car all the time, and I wish he was like around still, like when I started working for Rock 107, because I think he probably would have thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I grew up with all these names that you're talking about, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of good times with the morning show. In the early days, we actually drink beer at live remotes, and I'm not talking about like, hey, we're at the staircase doing a live remote, we're drinking beer. I'm talking about us setting up the van on a Saturday afternoon at Gibbons Ford, and Webster getting out of his car with a 6-pack of beer and doing the live broadcast,
Yeah. And
tilting back Rolling Rocks. I remember doing stuff like EFO, by the way, they're not 9 anymore, doing remotes there, and John would show up with a 6-pack of beer and a tray of pizza, and he'd lay down on a recliner and he'd have the microphone on his chest, and he'd do the remote like that the whole time. And then something happened. I wasn't at the event. Somebody complained about us drinking, and then like this big memo came out, like no drinking, no smoking. Then there was a khaki rule for a while where you had to wear a khaki and a polo shirt to enter your live broadcast and stuff. And I was used to Jay and John showing up, not even station logo, like they would show up in like Hawaiian shirts and shorts. And I swear Webster wore shorts, year round at the radio station.
Well, that's what I kind of mentioned earlier. Like, there was a time when you guys like had a lot of fun, and not that you don't have fun now, but it's just different. But back then, like, you could do all these things, and you did like these, off the wall remotes, and had these different things with listeners, and then lawyers get involved, or we have one complaint about something, and it goes to the ownership, and they're like, okay, this is a bad look and you can't do it anymore. It's such a crazy thing how that happened.
Yeah.
And that's with everything. It's not just radio. It was, looking back at the Weekender years back when I was there in 2004, and I talked to people that were there before me, everything was just a little more wild. But like I said, like one bad thing happens, or Karen sees you drinking a beer on a remote, and they're like, I don't like that, and they make a phone call, and it's like,
oh, not even these days. It's social media attacks now.
Sure, yeah.
You say one wrong thing on the air, or you post one wrong thing, and then all of a sudden it's you put your phone down for an hour and you come back and it's like, wow, that exploded. And if it's anything that your employer doesn't like, you get called on the carpet for.
Yeah.
I've gotten called on the carpet, not yelled at, but like when I post things, I usually don't comment about the post. Like I'll share something like a funny meme, and even if it's political, I don't say either way,
Right.
Like even when Biden was in town last year, this is a true story. I'm in the studio, and the doors closed. The studio's somewhat soundproof, and we're on the 5th floor, and I could hear chanting and chanting and chanting. And I walk out of the studio and I hear it, and I walk down. I'm going to go out on the roof. I open that back door on the roof. I'm like, wow, was that loud? All right. I walk back up to the studio. I had a pretty long sweep of music. I'm like, I could get down and back in 20 minutes. I could do this. So I ran down the back stairs, and Biden was over at the Trolley Museum, and there was a protest rally right across the street, and they were chanting loud. Granted, they had a PA system, which made it even louder. I just snapped a couple pictures. I didn't say anything about anything. And then all of a sudden people are like rip roaring me on Facebook. And I'm like, all I did was take a picture. And I basically told the story on Facebook exactly how I'm telling you now.
Right.
Like I heard ruckus outside. I wanted to go see what was going on. And I took a couple pictures of the ruckus.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, people are so tribal now too. It's kind of a shame how things have been so politicized. And if you're not with me, you're against me. If you don't believe in what I believe in, you should go die or something. Like, it's just crazy how we are. And you're just sharing a photo of like what you're witnessing. You didn't say like, I'm with or against these people. You're just, here's a photo of like, this is what's going on right now, and you're getting attacked for it.
Yeah.
But it's not the world my parents told me about. That's for sure.
It changes daily.
Yeah.
But I don't think a younger me would believe that, if I went back in time and told them.
Yeah.
He'd be like, you're crazy. Get out of here.
You mentioned ownership, and what's cool about Time Shamrock is it's been a locally owned and operated radio station for many, many years. The same can't be said about the KRZ, who their ownership is now Odyssey, I believe. The group that has like BHT, no, that's not even BHT, it's Hot 97.1 or Hot 97. I'm not even
I'm
sure.
glad that's back, by the way.
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
I never understood why they changed back in the day. I'm glad it's hot again.
97.9X is Cumulus. Like, those aren't locally owned and operated stations. Nothing wrong with that. But like, what I always thought was cool about Time Shamrock was, and I've been born and raised almost like on, locally owned, operated. So that was always something that cool to me about Time Shamrock and why I really enjoyed being there. But I'm sure that has like a good and bad. Ownership is on the third floor, which is good because there's no red tape to jump through. But it's also, like you said, you could say one wrong thing and they're going to hear it, and all they have to do is pick up the phone and say, come downstairs, or they'll come up to you. And
well, it's a big family too. So, I mean, you could run into any of them at any time, anywhere. And it's, it's happened, and, but it is nice that, most of them I have on my cell phone, that I still get a birthday card every year from Bill Lynott, which I always love. And what's funny about that is, Bill Lynott actually has the same birthday I do. And I'll tell you a quick story about this, because this is funny. This is a good time. So the arena just opened. They already had their first show a couple weeks earlier. It was Neil Diamond, where their first rock show was Leonard Skinner at ZZ Top. That first couple of years, we were the Penguins partner. Rock 107 was, and all the Penguins games were carried on Oldies 92. So we had a suite down there, and we're doing the live broadcast ahead of time. And the boss came out and be like, "Hey, here's a couple extra tickets for the suite. There's food and drink upstairs." And the show is actually on my birthday, like the day of my birthday. So we get done with the broadcast and we go up there, and I open the door in the suite, and there's birthday balloons. There's a happy birthday cake. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm only at the radio station now for like maybe 3 years. I'm like, I can't believe that this is why the boss gave me tickets. I came up for this birthday cake, right? So I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm just amazed. And then Bill Lynott walks in, and everybody else, happy birthday. And I'm like, oh, it's his birthday.
This isn't for me.
Yeah, this isn't for me. The cake and the balloons, the bottle of champagne, that's not for me. I'm glad I just didn't start digging in or blowing out candles. I'm like,
Yeah,
thanks,
right?
guys,
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always
Everybody always asks me, how do you know when Bill Lynott's birthday is? I'm like, it's the same day as mine.
Yeah. And speaking about birthdays, Rock 107 famous for the Rock 107 birthday bash. I think, I don't remember what year it was, or how many years in a row it was right before the pandemic. I think it was the 40th birthday. I'm not sure how many years it was for the birthday bash, but 2020 was the 40th birthday of Rock 107. I mean, that was a staple in NEPA. The Rock 107 birthday bash.
That was going to be a good one that year. We did a couple things. We announced our birthday party with Fuel. We announced that we were also doing a show later in the summer with Alice Cooper. And we also announced that Alice Cooper was our new night guy at the radio station, like all in one day. We got some TV press out of it. We got, obviously that we're owned by the newspaper. We got newspaper press out of it, and everything was looking great. We just freshened up and younged up the music at the radio station. I was PD now for like 7 months. We redid the imaging, we updated the music, and we had like this monster #1 book. Like everything just fell into pieces. Like everything was just running perfect. So we're #1 radio station in the market. We have all this stuff going on. Everybody's super excited about Fuel. We got one ticket blitz in, and then they shut the country down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And fast forward, and that never happened. I do remember though, like you were still at the station, I believe, but we kept kicking the can down the road for the birthday bash. We rescheduled it. It was going to be the end of May. And then we're like, we got to push it back. Then it was June. Then we had a July date. And then I think that last time that we rescheduled in July, basically the agent who we're dealing with basically called and said, here's the deal. We're just canceling everything. We'll circle back once this goes away. So we canceled the Fuel show. Alice Cooper was already kicked down the road. That was supposed to be January of 2021. That whole tour ended up canceling. So the Alice Cooper show that just happened at the arena, it was technically a reschedule, but it wasn't one of the reschedules where like, oh, if you had your tickets from 2020, they're still good. There's still summer shows this year, like Motley Crue and Rod Stewart and Santana. So if you got your tickets for that 2020 show, those tickets are still good this summer. And I did have tickets for Motley Crue in 2020. They are somewhere in the house. I've been looking for them the last couple of weeks. I haven't come across them yet. But so yeah, we had this big year planned. We work with your current company, Axelrad. I think, what do we get? 4,000 t-shirts.
I thought it was 2, but maybe it was 4. We got
it might have been.
Made.
But we had all these 40th anniversary yard signs made. We made this big 40th anniversary logo. We took out some big 40. We had some billboards. We had full page ads in the newspaper. We bought some TV commercials that we had produced. We had like this, and I don't know if you remember, you were in sales, but it was like, I remember when it hit, we were already at March budget.
Yeah.
And we already hit April budget, and we we're working on May already. And in a matter of 2 days, we weren't at budget anymore in April or March. And then all of a sudden it's like, like everything's off the books. Like I remember it went from how busy we were getting advertisers to like people had to start picking up the slack just to handle cancellations because everything was going.
It was, so there's a few things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the fall off. Like, I mean, as a station, we were the entire sales team, promotions, on-air talent, everything was clicking on all cylinders. Like you said, we were at March, the first week of March, we were at April, and that was like almost unheard of prior to that. I mean, we were a small sales team, we were a small staff. I mean, like most stations, but it just felt good. Like it felt like this is what this is all about. And and I mean, personally, I mean, I was in sales. I had already had laid out for that year to have a career year for myself personally. And as good as that felt, and as fast as it almost happened, it was just as fast, if not faster, to fall apart. And I told the story to Neil. I don't know if you heard it or not, but so you were named the program director of Rock 107. You said 7 months prior to that. So I thought it was actually less time, but
I was the interim guy when Rick left. They basically handed me the keys of the station. They're like, you're going to have to apply for the job, but you're going to run the station until then.
Okay.
And I did. And I just hit the ground running. I'm like, I'm not going to wait until they make a decision. I'm just going to do what I think is right.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's when we booked fuel and all that other kind of stuff. And, we kind of younged up the music a little bit. We got a little bit more 90s and 2000 music on the radio station.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's what like I've hurt me so much for you. I mean, like, you're this guy, and we'll go back to, we said it earlier. Hey, can you do this? Yeah, I'll do it. Can you do that? Yeah, I'll do it. You've been the company man for so long. Like, you've put your time in, you've earned your stripes. Like, you've done it all. This is your moment. Like, you're named program director of Rock 107. Something
so you're blaming me. It's all my fault.
No, I feel
you ruined the world. Why did you take that job?
No, but I felt like, I mean, like, this guy, this is the moment he's maybe didn't dream of it for that 22 years or whatever it might have been, but like, this is like a career moment for you, right? This is like almost a peak, so to speak, right? And then all this happens. Like, how? And I think you're a pretty positive guy for the most part, and if you're not, you hide it well. But like, how kind of devastating was that for you to kind of get to the point of your career like you've worked so hard for, and it's for all kind of just like get shit on?
You know, it was tough because you had all these, these plans, like I always think to yourself, like, and you probably think about this at your job. Oh, if I ever ran my own business, I would do things this way. Or if I was ever the boss, this is how I would do it. And then you finally start doing that and wow, it's working and it's working well. And then that wrench gets thrown in. And that threw everything off. And I don't even think we recovered yet from it as far as a listener standpoint. We did a blue collar job fair at the Viewmont Mall, and a lot of radio listeners from the station came up. And I'm talking to some of them, and they're like, "Yeah, I think I'm about to get back in the job scene." And I'm like, "Well, you haven't worked the last 2 years?" And they're like, "Well, we had all that extra money, and now it's like I got so used to being home all the time, but now I got to get back in the to work." You know, I did notice that our streaming numbers exploded, and they came down a little bit, but they are way higher than they were pre-pandemic. Uh, I actually just had to submit royalties today for online listening, and I think we had 862,000 like activations on the Listen Live in the month of March, right? It's April, which I think pre-pandemic was like 600,000. I think during the pandemic was like 1.5 million. You know, we do have the smart. I'm not going to say her name because she's going to go off in here.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, but we were one of the first radio stations in the country to get that skill for the smart speaker, which is cool because I knew we had to get on that quick because there are a couple of different Rock 107s in the country. It was the same thing when we got our website. I remember our marketing director at the time. He's like, "We got to do this now because if we don't get rock107.com, we're going to be something else for the rest of eternity." And the other Rock 107s throughout the country, they're like, like rock107fm.com or rock 107 their call letters.com. And it was something we jumped on early, but everything crumbled quick. We were minutes away from hiring a promotions director to fill my old spot, and I'm like, this is going to be nice. I'm not going to have to work as many weekends.
That's what I wanted to get to.
I'm not going to have to be the setup guy anymore. Am I not going to go to things anymore? I'm definitely going to go, but I don't have to be worried about the guy making everything happen. I could have somebody else do it for me. So we actually had an interview that week, and I had it narrowed down to my final three. And we were about to make a decision, and excuse me, burp and a cough there. It's a Keystone Light. And that just all fell apart. And it was crazy during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Working from home was tough. With my wife home as well, like I think the Wi-Fi in everybody's neighborhood was just moving slow because everybody was home. But imagine trying to upload audio every day and get your show done. Got my wife on a Zoom call. I'm on a Zoom call. I'm trying to do my show live from my laptop. I'm trying to upload a file to the radio station, and it's just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. It's like, all right, this got to air in 5 minutes. It's been uploading for 12. Mm-hmm. And then we got back to the office, I think, a little bit after Memorial Day of that year. But everything changed so much. We weren't allowed to do events. The radio station's always been event driven. And then the whole hiring my replacement was put on hold. And, then we slowly started to pick up, I think they thought COVID was going to go away. We started picking up doing some stuff, and everything shut down again. Then, New Year, some advancements in the pandemic, stuff started opening back up again. And then I was finally able to hire somebody. And luckily, one of the people who were my final three from the year before, a girl named Heather, who was actually from Maine, who applied. She was interested again when we posted again. So that's who we ended up hiring. So fast forward a little bit, Tom Ferguson, who was the program director for 92.1, he took a dream job of his to be like a sports director at Lackawanna College. And so they promoted Heather to take his job. So here we are again.
Yep.
It's a little bit easier this time because Heather's handling a lot of the 92.1 stuff, like the websites and the live events and the contesting over there. But it was like, oh, here's the reset button again. And like, this has been my career. Every time I get promoted,
Yep.
like my old job gets eliminated, and it's like, like I'm never going to apply for the general manager job because I can only imagine if I ever did 10 years down the road. It's like, all right, you're the GM, but you're also the PD and the promotions director. You're still going to do afternoons, and you're the director of sales, and you're also the account reps.
And you're the custodian.
Yeah, and you're the custodian.
No, I made that joke earlier. Yeah, I mean, and I was genuinely like hurt for you, and I hope you like that's not me saying that because I'm looking at you right now. It's when that happened, I was just like, man, this is like this is terrible. Not only for me from a personal standpoint, but like I felt badly for you and what you've worked so hard for and what worked towards. And yeah, what a shitty situation for. I mean, the whole world's going through it, right? But like, damn.
I am glad that we were able to go back to the office a lot earlier than some other radio groups and stuff.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people love working from home, and if you're watching this and you do, that's good for you, but that's just not for me.
Not for me either.
Yeah, it's
really
not for me, especially when you're trying to manage a staff. Texting people, calling people, Zoom meetings. It's so much easier. Like I have to ask production a question and either yelling down the hallway or just walking out and be like, hey, did we get this promo back yet from our sound guy? Oh, right. We did. Okay, great. I'll start working on it.
Not just that. I'm a people person. Like I like the camaraderie. I mean, I've not arguments, but I've been. I mean, I think it's good for humans in general to be in an office setting and working side by side with people and working towards certain goals and things like that. I feel like the more we hide behind these screens, the worse we are off as people. I mean, people will probably burn me at the cross for that, but like that's just my opinion. Again, if you like working at home, I mean, my wife got a promotion; she works at home now. I'm not knocking it. I think it's good to be in an office or working with people side by side and all that kind of stuff. I think it's good for communication. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's where we're at today at the station. So, but believe it or not, we do have a new promotions director starting in the beginning of May.
Oh, cool. Great.
Pat White. I don't know if you remember Pat.
Oh, Pat. Yeah. No kidding.
So I haven't released that to the trades yet, but it will by the time this podcast hits the streets. It's going to be public knowledge.
That's awesome.
So he's going to be, and he's also going to be looking over ESPN radio.
Cool.
Which is cool. He's a sports fanatic, much like Tom Ferguson was. And I'm the type of guy, like, I could talk about the Steelers. You start talking about hockey or baseball or soccer.
Yeah.
And I have no idea. Like, I'm going to be honest, like this conversation that we've had is longer than any college sports I've ever watched in my life combined. I don't gamble on sports. I don't watch NCAA. I couldn't tell you who won the Final Four. I couldn't tell you what the Rose Bowl is, except it's a college football game, or who played it, or where it's played, or but you talk NFL, I'm into it.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a Steeler household.
That's the wrong PA's team, but that's fine. Wait, you mentioned we talked for a long time, and I don't want to keep you much longer. But what was one of the coolest moments you had in radio? I mean, you've been around.
If you asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have him and hawed for a second. The highlight of my career, I thought, was when I talked to William Shatner when he called in on the radio show, and we chatted for a little while. I'm like, this is great. This is a guy I grew like. I'm such a big Trekkie. Like, this is awesome. Fast forward a couple months, the show's coming up in like a month and a half at the Kirby, and Ann texts me. She's like, what would you think about emceeing the William Shatner uh when he comes to town? And I said, without a doubt, absolutely. What does that entail? I don't know. I think you're going to be in the audience with a microphone asking, question, walking up to people for questions for William Shatner. Yeah, I'm in it. This is going to be great. So it's like 3 days out, and Stu Green from Magic City Productions. If you're into concerts, you probably remember the days Stu used to do everything from AC/DC at the arena to like everything up at the Broome County Arena. So he emails me, oh, here's the instructions for this Friday night. So I'm not walking through the audience with a microphone. I am sitting on the stage for an hour and a half with William Shatner, and I have to be ready with at least 20 questions, and I have to submit them in like the next 24 hours, and they all have to be pre-approved. And I'm like, this is wicked. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I'm like, I gotta host this guy on stage for an hour and a half. This is big, and it's a sold out show. I knew so many people who were going. This is a lot different than getting on the stage and saying, hey, I'm Hoover from Rock 107, and here's Alice Cooper, yay. And this is me on stage talking with William Shatner. Mm-hmm. So I submit all my questions. They all come back. Great questions. Would you like to have dinner with William Shatner? Yes, absolutely. Okay. We're going to do it in the green room. It's going to be catered from a downtown restaurant. I'm not going to name the restaurant's name because you're going to find out in a second here. So a lot of people are telling me, just beware. Bill Shatner could be a real asshole. And I'm like, okay, I'll be fine. So I get down there, and his agent comes out and he's like, hey, you want something to drink? And I said, yeah, water or something like that. He's like, oh, would you like something stiffer? And I said, I'm like, what do you got? He's like, well, let me give you a bourbon on the rocks. I said, okay. So he came back in. He's like, dinner's coming down soon. We're going over final prep with Bill, and we'll come get you for dinner. So I hear the back door open at the Kirby Center, and I could hear chatting, and they open Bill's door, and I'm in the other green room, so I'm not seeing anything going on. And I hear the tray drop of the food.
Oh no. I
hear curse words that I don't think I've ever heard before coming out of Bill Shatner's mouth. He's screaming and yelling, wah, wah. So the agent, his manager comes in and says, hey, Mark, we're going to put off dinner. I'll come get you when Bill wants to talk to you. Okay. So I thought I was eating. I didn't end up not eating. And here I got a glass of bourbon in me on an empty stomach. I'm like, oh, this ain't good. And then like 20 minutes go by, and he's, oh, Bill's ready for you now. So they didn't even clean up the mess yet, because I think they were just so scared of Bill. It was just, so I walk in his, and I'm like stepping over like sandwiches and, busted glass and stuff. And Bill's like, I'd offer you something to eat, but they dropped the food tray. There's a banana over there if you want it. Maybe you could dip in that yogurt there. I'm like, I'm good. So he was a little bitchy for a little bit. And he's like, you submit your question. They said, yeah. I'm like, he's like, oh, I see you have them on index cards. I said, yeah. I said, I actually typed them because I have horrible handwriting. And he looked at it. He's like, garbage, 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 garbage. And then he just takes the whole stack and throws them in the garbage. And then he grabs a stack out of his like briefcase. These are the questions you're asking tonight.
What?
And I said, okay, I'll do that. And so then he sat back for a little bit, and he's like, I have a reputation for being an asshole. He's like, it's really an act. And then all of a sudden he just turned off. And he was like, for the next like 45 minutes, he was like the coolest guy I ever met. We talked about my dogs. He talked about his dogs. We talked about horseback riding. We both use CPAP machines. We both sleep at night with the mask. we had like a half-hour conversation about CPAPs and how he can't sleep without his and vice versa. And then we were all cool, and then we went up on the stage and we did it. And I got a couple comments on Twitter like, wow, why did Hoover ask that question? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to think to myself, like, here's your questions. This is what you got. Like, I had no choice. This is like, there was one in there and I saw it and I'm like, oh boy. The one question was, do you wear boxers or briefs? And his response was, depends. I'm like, this is the oldest, cheesiest joke I've ever, and it was his joke.
Yeah.
And like, I had no choice but to read it. And,
Right.
and a couple of people comment on Twitter about it. I'm like, but how do you take that curtain? Like now I'm doing it, but how do you take down, open up that curtain and say, well, it was pre-planned. It was, it was Bill's question. And then the other thing was they said, oh, yeah, he has to be off the stage by 11 o'clock. If he's not, interrupt him. So I asked him the last question, like 10 to 11. And he just goes off about this long story about him and Leonard Nimoy, about him stealing Leonard Nimoy's bike backstage. And because they used to race every day to be first at lunch on the lot. And I'm looking over the clock, it's 10:58. It's 10:59. And there's also the timer backstage on the backstage clock. And we're counting down seconds. I'm like, what do I do? This is William Shatner.
Right.
Like, I just saw him blow up on the guy who delivered his food. What am I supposed to do? Stand up and say, hey, thanks, Bill. See you later. Good night. But I tell you what, like the pro he was, it was like 10:59 and 50 seconds. And he's like, thank you so much, Wilkes-Barre. Good night. See you later. And then the curtain came down. I'm like, wow, that was like on the dime. Like he did that like perfect, but the fact of that, I got to sit on the stage and also have all those little side stories. I mean, that was really like the highlight of my career, and it's funny because it really has nothing to do with music.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
I wrote some notes down. I'm a pro, if you didn't know that or not.
I have noticed.
I'm a pro, right? I did write down William Shatner because I remember you like for 3 days prior to the show, like you were like beside yourself. You were
Yeah.
very nervous. And I had a feeling that was the moment you were going to reference when I asked you this question, which is crazy because I know you post a lot of pictures from the past and pictures with the Foo Fighters and R.I.P. Taylor Hawkins and
I never met Taylor, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
I never had a chance to.
I never met any of them. But it was weird with Taylor. Like that hurt me. Like, who am I? Like nobody, right? Like I shouldn't be hurt by that at all. But like a day or two after, it kind of like settled in. Like I have moments like with the Foo Fighters, like my dad passing. Like I think the day after he passed, their album, the double disc album "In Your Honor" came out, and I just really kind of apply those CDs to that moment of my life, and just seeing Taylor and the way he smiled, and he always just seemed like he was having a great time and just a happy person. And I kind of felt like I knew him just because of all the documentaries I would watch or just the shows I'd see online and things like that. And it was weird.
The other thing that takes that whole thing the next level is I don't know who does marketing for the Foo Fighters. They have always been, to me, on the cusp, this far away from overexposure because they're everywhere. But they always did it in a way where it wasn't overbearing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
You couldn't go a day without reading a Foo Fighters story. But unlike somebody like love him or hate him, like Tom Brady, to me, overexposed.
Right.
Like everything's Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. It could be, the Steelers are bringing back Terry Bradshaw, and it would be a news story for 30 seconds until they say, "Oh, Tom Brady's having another kid," and that'd be the top story for the next 8 days on ESPN. But Foo Fighters always got that amazing exposure, whether it be at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Grammys. They were always newsworthy, but they never got to that point where it just broke and people are like, I'm so sick of the Foo Fighters. I don't want to hear about the Foo Fighters anymore. They always did a wonderful job with that. And I'm going to talk about old school radio. I went up to Cabin the weekend it happened. I actually took that Friday off. I have zero cell service up the Cabin. I send my wife a text out by the Cabin gate, which is like a mile down the road. Hey, I made it. I'll see you tomorrow. And then basically I shut my phone off and put it aside because it's just the battery's just going to drain looking for signal the whole evening. So when I left the Cabin in the morning, I get 105.9 up there. I had the radio station on and I'm like, wow, Neil's playing a Foo Fighters song. Like, this isn't a normal Foo Fighters song for us. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to handle this with Neil? I'm going to have to send him a text and be like, hey, we're, like, if you're going to play something that we don't have in regular rotation, we got to chat about it. And then another Foo Fighters song came on and I'm like, all right, this ain't a rock block weekend. Like what's he doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then he opens the mic and it said that Taylor passed away. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So it was that old school. I was disconnected for the world for the last 24 hours. And I found out by listening to Rock 107 that he passed.
Yeah. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, Neil went from being in trouble to getting praised for taking the initiative.
I was going to say,
and then he's like, I emailed you asking if it was good. I'm like, I have no cell service up the Cabin. I can't do anything about it.
So, well, how cool is that you have a staff that like is on top of it and you can trust? I mean, that was like a good thing to do. Right?
And they know when artists that we play pass away that we usually make a big deal about it. When Eddie Van Halen passed away, we went all Van Halen. We went wall to wall Van Halen. Mm-hmm. It was like it was like almost 4 hours, and I had to only stop because Alice Cooper show comes on and his show comes up over the satellite from Arizona. But right up to 7 o'clock, it was nonstop Van Halen the day Eddie passed away. And like I said, 4 hours, and we didn't repeat a song. Like I'm like, we're going in, we're doing this, and we're not going to play Panama twice. We're not going to play Jump twice. We're just going to keep playing Van Halen. I probably could have kept going another hour, but like I said, Alice Cooper came up at 7. And then as soon as the Alice Cooper show started, it started with a montage of Eddie Van Halen. And then Alice went into like all these great stories with Eddie Van Halen, which was really cool.
Yeah. You guys always do a really nice job to honor those who have left us, whether it be on the billboards that the Time Shamrock owns or, ads in the newspaper. And I always thought that was a cool thing that you guys do.
And we're getting to the point now, it's happened just way too often.
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure, you're a classic rock station. These guys, unfortunately, it happens to the best of us. We're all going to die.
A lot of times they don't happen at the best of times either. Like it always seems like it happens at the worst. The worst is when it happens on the weekends.
Sure.
Because now you're scrambling because, the people in charge of Time Shamrock Outdoor, well, they work Monday through Friday. So to get something on the billboard on a Saturday or Sunday, now you're working with trying to get them to either do it from home or come in and do it. The other thing is the design department that puts the boards together. Now we have like a template, but working in for a news company and trying to avoid ourselves getting sued. If you're like I'm trying to think, there's a lot of rock Facebook sites out there that are just like, hey, I'm Joe Smo classic rock page. So they're just stealing stuff off the internet, putting pictures of Charlie Watts or Eddie Van Halen. But if we're putting them on a licensed radio station's website or on a billboard, we have to own that image. So then there's a scramble of seeing what do we have in our library that we own that we could use. And sometimes that's the big holdup. Sometimes is getting stuff on the website or on the Facebook page. If we don't own an image, legally we can't use it. Granted, working for the newspaper, it helps a little bit because a lot of times they may have a photo of like, oh, here's when Charlie Watts played with his side band at the Jazz Cafe back in 1992 or something like that.
Sure.
Or there might be, oh, here's when Meatloaf played the FM Kirby Center. Perfect. Let's use it. Let's rock and roll with it. Or there's times where you buy a service that you get so many images And sometimes you're lucky enough to have an image of an artist in there, which was lucky enough for Eddie Van Halen. We actually had a photo package that included a few photos of Eddie. I'm like, okay, we have the rights to use this. We could get this up and make it happen and stuff. But
I never would even have thought about that as far as
Yeah.
like a legal standpoint. So
nobody wants to get sued.
no,
It's not good.
It came close that one time.
Yeah, well, a couple times, there've been some lawsuits, but all have been settled for small stuff,
Didn't you use you use like a picture of a cigar?
Yeah, that a client sent us.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here's
crazy.
this cigar we're giving away on the radio. Here's a picture for your website. It came from the client. Okay. And then all of a sudden, the guy who owned the rights to the cigar is like, we're suing you. We're suing you. I'm like,
jeez.
But that all settled out.
That's good.
But, what else you got on your phone down there? I can't see.
I think I covered it. Well, let's go over my notes real quick. You're program director at NEPA's classic rock station, Rock 107. We went over the different roles that you had at Rock. I didn't even look at this once, to be honest with you. Life before Rock 107, you said you served. So thank you for your service. That's probably
I don't deserve thanks. I mean, I never served in any kind of combat situation or anything else like that. I did my time, got in, got out. I'm glad I did it. It was an experience. But I have so many friends. I got some really close friends who served a few times overseas. One of my best friends runs the VFW in Duryea. He's a commander down there, and those are the good guys. Those are the really good guys.
Well, you all deserve respect for regardless of the situation, because there's people that like me. I mean, the thought of that is scary. I think if I had to, I would, but the fact that I don't have to, thank you.
Yeah, we're all too old now. They don't want us.
We mentioned Joe Rogan. We started off with him, so that's good. You mentioned the cabin. You're a hunter. I actually wanted to talk about that. You got the PD job. You kind of thought you were gonna have a little less responsibility. I mean, you're married. You have a wife.
More responsibility, but less.
Yeah,
more options to delegate.
You know what I meant. Yeah, you just had more time, to enjoy time with your wife, enjoy time at the cabin, enjoy going hunting. But we talked about how your career has been getting promoted and keeping your old job titles as well. But talked about your coolest radio moment, birthday bashes. And I mean, I have a note here. This is a good thing. We could probably wrap it up with this, but taking Rock 107 into the future. We're kind of coming out of the pandemic now. Hopefully there's no, different variants. There's no, come fall or winter, we don't kind of recede into the whatever, the virus, right?
Yeah.
What are your plans to, take Rock 107 into the future and put all this behind us?
I want to get back out on the streets again. I think some of the stuff we've done in the past, being part of the community, was awesome. I'm glad to see parades and bazaars and picnics and all that stuff coming back. I think I just got an invite the other day for the West Pittston Cherry Blossom Festival. Disappointed to hear the Armed Forces Parade's not coming back this year in Scranton, but we still have the Veterans Parade coming up later this year. We have the Bacon and Barbecue Festival coming up. Hopefully, we get to the point where that we all feel safe to bring back the Rock 107 birthday bash, whether it be with the new owner of the new owners of the Woodlands or somewhere else. But I mean, they were always epic nights. I mean, the stories from all of them are just, we could have did a podcast just on birthday bashes.
Yeah.
Bring something like that back. And I do want to start bringing. Now, when I say newer music, I'm not saying like, hey, let's play
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but we're not going to be playing Billie Eilish tomorrow, but
Cardi B.
But let's start introducing some of the music that we played when it was brand new out of the box, whether it be, getting the White Stripes back on Rock 107 or getting Audio Slave back on Rock 107. I mean, these were the bands that we broke in NEPA. Like, to me, we own these bands. These are our bands. We played them first. We should be playing them again and stuff. I mean, some of those artists I just mentioned, they're 25, 30 years old already, a lot of them.
Classic.
I get the comments all the time. Well, Green Day's not classic rock. I said, A, they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and B, they've been around over 30 years. Like, I remember when we were playing Tesla, and Tesla was only around for 10 years. I never remember anybody saying, why are you playing Tesla? They're not classic rock. Playing Guns N' Roses in the 90s at Rock 107. Nobody ever grabbed me and said, why are you playing GNR? They're not classic rock. But I mean, I think there's a lot of cool stuff out there that from the 90s and 2000s that we could start issuing into the library. And even if it's some newer stuff from classic rock artists. I remember when you were still at the radio station, and I think I had the Aerosmith 9 Lives album playing in my office. And you came in here like, I used to listen to this album all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's a great album, but we don't play anything from it. Maybe it's time to start getting something like Hole in My Soul or Falling in Love is Hard on My Knees or getting some Aerosmith Pink in there,
I'll never forget the cover of that on cassette. It was the udder of a cow branded.
Oh, that was Aerosmith's Get a Grip. Nine Lives was the
9 Lives with the
the
carrot, like a whatever kind of wheel with a cat on it, right?
Yeah.
Got it mixed up. Yeah.
That's fine. You still got an Aerosmith album,
That's good, right?
But and want to do some stuff like that, and hopefully we could start building our up and coming, our next guys up next. Maybe get a fresh voice on the weekend. It kind of bummed me out during the pandemic that we had we laid off a couple of part-timers. You left. I offered you a show, John. We actually had a name for you. What was it? Johnny
Diamond.
Johnny Diamond. That's right,
dude. I'm telling. So
because that's your mom's maiden name, right?
My mom's maiden name is. She never changed her. She never changed. It was, and it's not Diamond DIA. It's DYMOND. And like, so I selfishly could have, done that because like I was like honored that you would even like consider it. If it's something you ever want to consider. If you need a guy, I'll be that guy that says, yeah, I'll do it.
Where were you this last week? Neil was out sick, and true story, Ron got hit in the eye with a plush giraffe. That's all I have. But Ron had emergency eye surgery. So Ron's been out the last 2 weeks. So a couple of days ago, Mike Evans was doing my shift and I was doing Neil's shift because Mike has a full-time job. He's like, I get out early, but I can't like do middays. I'm like, oh, we'll just slot for a couple of days.
Yeah. Well, so
I could have called on Johnny Diamond. That would have been awesome.
Johnny Diamond. So no, but like you're like, oh, let's test this out. And like at the time, like I knew I was possibly leaving. I didn't want to do that for 2 or 3 weeks and then be like, hey, I'm leaving, and then like that be not a thing. Like I didn't want to do that to you. So you're welcome.
Yeah. I'll reach out after this. We'll figure something out,
But I know that's cool. And it's like, and people don't realize that, you're a classic rock station and there's music that came out 30 years ago that it doesn't feel that long ago, but it really was. And unfortunately, classic rock that, the 70-year-olds listen to and think is classic rock. Like we talked about people dying, like, unfortunately your audience also gets older and they unfortunately pass away. So you really have to like be cognizant of that and kind of introduce the stuff that like I used to listen to that's classic rock. So that way you kind of bring me into the fold and have a new generation, so to speak, of listeners.
Absolutely.
And you know that.
Yeah. And that's the game plan,
So,
and with Johnny Diamond on,
that sounds like a winner. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I think so too.
Johnny Diamond. It's funny too, because I told my mom about that. And I said, Mom, like, I'm gonna break your heart, but I feel like I need to tell you what's gonna happen or what could have happened. And I said, Hoover, I don't know how serious he was, but he said, like, hey, like I want to kind of bring you into the mix on the weekends. at night or whatever. And I said the name would be Johnny Diamond, and she was like over the moon. And I'm
And
like,
the only reason I wanted to do that, John, because I know you had your own brand with alt natives and stuff like that. I just didn't want to confuse people,
Mhm.
like if it came down, hey, Johnny Popko's on Rock 107 now, and and they tune in and be like, oh, this is not what he was doing 3 weeks ago, or this is what he was doing 4 weeks ago, you know. But because you had a nice little thing going over there, and the couple times I was PD at that station for the 5 or 6 weeks at a time. I'm glad the last time I got to do it, we straightened that show out a little bit. We actually opened the library up quite a bit for you. You're like, hey, I could play more than the same 15 bands every week. I'm like, yeah. I
yeah,
said, you send it to me, we'll get it in the system. And you were one of those guys, like after like the third time, they're like, can't you just show me how to do it? I'll put it in. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. That'll make life even easier.
that's what happened too. Yeah, I was just like, I could do it, like, 'cause
Yeah.
I knew what I was playing the week prior or 2 weeks
Uh-huh.
prior, and but yeah. So, well, dude, I mean, we're going on almost 2 hours here.
Well, you were late, so
I signed on right at 8:30.
8:32, I think.
No way.
I'm sitting here. I'm like, maybe he forgot, or maybe he was joking
No,
about having me on his
no.
Johnny Popko experience.
No, I mean, like, it's hard to believe that in the 7 years that we worked together, we didn't have a conversation that went past 15 minutes. But I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was nice to hear about your career, and I knew most of it, not all of it. And hopefully anyone listening or watching kind of gets a feel for more of who you are, and where you came from, and the hard work that you put in to get to the point you are at today. And just appreciate the inner workings of radio, because it is not difficult, but it's not as easy as press and play. So it was great talking to you.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on. And I guess 10:14. I guess it's I guess I missed the 10 o'clock news, but I'll find out what's going on in the world tomorrow.
We talked earlier. We have these
And
phones at our fingertips.
hey,
so
we
we
went the whole time. I think I only checked to see what time it was once. So
yeah, I saw you yawn, and you're like, fuck, what time is it? Or just wrap this
tell
up.
you, man, I
dude,
go to
wrap it-
bed at like 9 o'clock.
Sorry, I kept you up late.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll make it happen. All right, John.
But looking forward to seeing what Rock 107 does in the future. And you know where to find me. Let's finally grab those beers in the garage. All right.
Okay, absolutely. I got a sunroom now with a bar in it. We can do it here.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll see you.